He was convicted of killing his girlfriend the day after Christmas, and today he was sentenced to nearly 20 years behind bars. But the victim's family says that's not enough.
He took a life. He should have got life.
Tracking two weather systems for the inland northwest, timing out when we'll see some rain and when we'll see some snow for the area.
A judge today mostly upheld Initiative 976, voter-approved $30 car tabs. So what happens now? Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Hanrahan. It is a big day for Tim Eyman. He's been sponsoring anti-tax initiatives in Washington for more than 2 decades now. And tonight, one of his biggest initiatives got a win in court. It just so happened to come on the same day he officially launched his campaign for governor. Our political reporter, Casey Decker, joins us live in the newsroom tonight to break down everything that happened today. Casey?
Well, Mark, the ballot measure is 976, which, of course, last year Washington voters approved. It lowers car tab fees and makes a bunch of other changes to transportation-related taxes. Now, a group of cities sued, calling the initiative unconstitutional. And today, a judge said he's not buying those arguments.
The argument from the cities that voters were misled by I-976, that the initiative was unclear about what it would do, so voters weren't aware of all its consequences. Consequences that will result in a massive loss in revenue for transportation projects across the state. In the early stages of the legal battle, a judge said the cities would likely win their arguments. So he ordered 976 be put on pause. Today, that same judge basically changing his mind, saying that there was no proof beyond a reasonable doubt that the initiative violates the state constitution in those ways. However, he did not hit the play button and lift his injunction. He said there are still some issues left to rule on before that can happen. Regardless, this thing is almost certainly going to be decided in the state Supreme Court. In the meantime, it is a somewhat surprising victory for Tim Eyman, whose measures have often been struck down in court. He said today, quote, "I am thrilled this judge reversed himself and no longer thinks voters were confused. We never were. Voters have 3 times demanded $30 tabs and 3 times repudiated this dishonest tax. Their vote should be implemented immediately." The measure is being defended by the state attorney general's office. Bob Ferguson releasing a statement today lauding the victory, while also taking a shot at Eyman's own behavior. Quote, "It's worth noting that the hearing in which Tim Eyman had an outburst, we lost, and the hearing in which Eyman remained silent, we won. I've said from the start that this case will ultimately be decided by the state Supreme Court. My office will continue working to uphold the will of the voters every step of the way." The ruling came down on the same day Eyman decided to announce his official run for governor as a Republican. He made the announcement in Yakima.
"I am literally the taxpayer's best friend, and I want your best friend sitting in the governor's office looking out for you. I decided, since the Democrats and the media always try to make the initiatives about me and basically put me on the ballot, I felt it was time to just simply make it official. And so I'm running for governor, and I'm running to win."
Now, Eyman has already raised more than $50,000 for his run, but he is not alone in the Republican field. Former Bothell Mayor Joshua Freed, State Senator Phil Fortunato, and Republic Police Chief Lauren Culp, they've all raised money in 6 figures. And of course, there's incumbent Democrat Jay Inslee, who's got more than $3 million in his war chest. Voters will weigh in on all that for the first time this coming August. Mark?
Casey Decker live in the newsroom tonight. Casey, thank you very much. Meantime, the Washington House approved a ban on race-based hairstyle discrimination. It's now headed to the Senate for consideration. Current state law only prohibits discrimination for race, religion, and sexual orientation. If passed, the measure would amend the section covering race to include hairstyles like afros, braids, dreadlocks, and twists. All right, to weather now. It's been a beautiful week so far in Spokane, but we can't hold on to that weather forever. Meteorologist Thomas Patrick joining us now. Thomas, you're tracking wet weather heading in.
Yeah, pair of weather systems for the second half of this week. The one that hits us tomorrow, not going to amount to too much rainfall or snowfall either way. So for the most part, we'll still squeeze out some sunshine for the next few days here. Even tonight, another calm evening on Doppler radar. So let's widen things out, show you not just the big picture, but the really big picture. Pair of weather systems you can see spinning in the North Pacific. The first one is here, and these extending fronts down a little bit farther to the south. Well, that's going to be our Thursday system. The one farther back towards the Aleutian Islands, a little piece of that energy will head our way on Saturday. And the jet stream is going to help to move it along. These are just the winds that you see on the screen, but they're coming right out of the Pacific Ocean and not just the North Pacific. So plenty of moisture to be had, especially for this weekend storm system. But for tomorrow, a little bit more sunshine, even for the morning hours, partly cloudy skies. And yes, the sunrise now before 7 a.m. and even during the day, another day with high temperatures in the 40s. So the warmth stays with us. So coming up, I'm going to time out when we can expect rain and when some areas will expect some snowfall for this upcoming weekend.
Sounds good.
I had lost my sister. Someone I can't back. You don't know what you have done!
Joshua Forrester will spend the next 19 years behind bars. He pleaded guilty to shooting and killing his longtime girlfriend in their Hilliard apartment the day after Christmas. Forrester told detectives he killed his girlfriend because, quote, he couldn't let her go. Witnesses who heard the gunshots that night say they saw Forrester covered in blood with a gun in his hand. At the time, he told investigators his girlfriend wanted to break up with him. In court today, the victim's family told the judge that's simply not a good enough reason to take her life.
I couldn't believe it. What I was hearing, I sat in silence for hours wondering how someone that says he loves my daughter could murder her.
Why did this happen? Why did it have to be her, you know? I just feel more alone than ever.
Forrester's lawyers spoke on his behalf in court today. He told the judge he wanted to accept responsibility for his actions. Meantime, the victim's family told us Forrester's sentence should have been longer. The owner of QQ Sushi says he's replacing the entire kitchen staff following a viral video that showed some startling food handling techniques. The owner says he'll make sure his employees have an understanding of safe food handling practices now. We also now know that QQ Sushi does not need a health department's approval to reopen because the restaurant voluntarily closed rather than health leaders mandating its closure. Health inspectors say so far they did not find any signs of improper food storage at the restaurants, so they have not suspended their food permit. The health department said they conducted training on proper food handling procedures with the employees. Investigators will also be back at the restaurant to see their food handling firsthand when they reopen. QQ Sushi issued a statement today saying they were going to reopen coming up next week. Leaders at Spokane's Planned Parenthood want the city to do more to curb some of the frequent protests outside their building on East Indiana Avenue. They claim those protests are interfering with public safety, so they've created an ordinance they plan to present to City Council. KREM 2's Shayna Waldtower explains how they're hoping this policy will help keep things a little quieter.
Staff at Planned Parenthood say this noise interrupts their work and the patient experience. It can add an extra level of stress for patients seeking health care.
This is just something that no patient should ever have to go through to get their care. It's really unsafe.
It is against state law to disturb the peace outside of a healthcare facility. Leaders at Planned Parenthood want to make the guidelines more clear within the city of Spokane. They're asking for an ordinance that includes a threshold for what counts as a disturbance, such as staff complaining that the protests interrupt their work. The other point would allow people to file a lawsuit against the protesters if they interfered with their health care. The police department would have to follow these guidelines to determine warnings or noise violations. Officer John O'Brien says police are keeping protests under control in Spokane.
There have been reports of bullhorns, of musical instruments, of horns honking, of cars driving by. We have addressed those with people as they happen, and like I said before, after the warning, there's been compliance.
He says officers are never there to stop the protests, but to have a neutral presence and ensure everyone's safety.
We were never going to make everybody happy all of the time, but we have been very successful in allowing both parties to peacefully assemble and exercise their First Amendment right without assaults or any criminal behavior like that.
O'Brien says the department is working on a presentation to give City Council and explain how their current protocol has been effective.
That was Shayna Waldtower reporting. Still ahead, it almost feels like spring's right around the corner, but not so fast. Meteorologist Thomas Patrick's tracking more snow in the mountains and the potential even for some snow in the valleys. More on that coming up after the break.